Okay, so let's start. Good day, dear fellow Toastmasters and our honorable guests. Let me start with several questions, like very quick and simple questions about environmental sustainability. Feel free to unmute yourself to say yes or no, because I cannot see your face here as I'm sharing the screen. Do you unplug the electricity when you leave the room?
No.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, have you ever replaced your plastic bottles to the reusable ones?
Maybe.
Yes, stainless steel.
Do you share your own resources with someone else in your community?
Yes.
Like
No.
bicycle or... Okay. Have you ever turned your old clothes into something useful?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
No.
Someone else?
Okay.
I have a little brother.
Yeah,
We all
it's
have
true.
little brothers.
Okay. Do you sort your household waste from recyclable, non-recyclable?
I try to do so.
I will do it. I do it, but I don't think
Oh.
that it works.
I'm obliged
Okay.
to do this.
Okay. Last but not the least, are you aware that many scientists and experts predict that there will be a global temperature increase in the recent future?
Yep.
Yeah, unfortunately.
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
but we do nothing with it.
Okay, so this last question, I just added it to my script yesterday because while I was reading a book and I found out that 32% of the global population are actually not aware of this. So if you said no to some of my previous questions, don't worry, you're not a minority, and don't get stressed over by my bunch of questions bombarding you in the beginning of my presentation. I'm not here judging whether you are green enough or not. All right? So my name is Yingkar, and once upon a time, as Damir said, I was a Toastmaster, but now I'm here as a trained climate reality leader. Before I start my presentation, I want to have a disclaimer. I'm not an environmental activist, but I'm a future environmental engineer to be. Put it simply, I don't fancy going onto the streets and protest, but I want to find the solutions. And 1 year ago, I actually didn't even believe in the global warming thing. You guessed it, there are a lot of research findings about this is probably one of the period of the Earth's lifespan. But I changed, just like the Earth, because I saw many facts and I got convinced. And today I want to share this knowledge with you that I gained on this matter. And we will go through 3 questions. Must we change? Can we change? And will we change? You see, I like a lot of questions. And the first question is, must we change? And this is a question that requires a little bit explanation of what a climate crisis is all about. Our beautiful planet, the so-called blue marble, if we look at it horizontally, we would find how thin the sky actually is. It is not the vast expanse we see when we look up to the sky from the ground. If you could drive a car straight up into the air at superhighway speed, you would reach to the top actually in 5 minutes. However, we're using it as an open sewer, and it's a problem because when the sunlight comes through that layer and warm up the Earth, some of that heat would be absorbed and is radiated back out to the space in the form of infrared radiation. And some of it is trapped by the natural greenhouse gas layer, which is a good thing, actually. It keeps the temperature within the Earth's surface in the healthy boundary. But the problem is that we are sickening this greenhouse gas layer. By spewing 152 million tons of man-made global warming pollution into the thin shell of our atmosphere every 24 hours, every single day. And when the greenhouse gas layer thickens, that traps more of the outgoing infrared. And where does this greenhouse pollution come from? I think you all are aware. But the biggest source by far is our dependence on fossil fuels, which results in all this CO2 being trapped up into the sky. You can see that after World War II, it starts really shooting up. And for now, it's still going up. And as a result, the extra heat that was trapped by the global warming pollution drives temperature up. By the way, this year is 70% likely to be the hottest year ever measured with the instruments. 19 out of 20 hottest ever have been since 2001. And the 5 hottest of all time has been the last 5 years. Look at the capital of Australia. Canberra just set its all-time high temperature record. In Africa, Ghana did the same. And last year, Europe had the hottest year ever on record. And all these countries are setting their individual hottest year as well in the Europe. And towards the end of the June, north of the Arctic Circle in Siberia, it went over 38 degrees Celsius, probably the hottest temperature north of the Arctic Circle. But if we step back and look at the Earth as a whole and see that 71% of the planet is covered by the ocean, bad news is that 93% of all the extra heat trapped by man-made global warming pollution goes into the ocean. And the ocean temperature are also setting a new high temperature record almost every year. And this year is also very likely to set a new record. And when the ocean heats up so much, that means that the storms come with the ocean are getting much more stronger. And we saw tropical storm Laura do so much more damage in the Northern Caribbean. In the Philippines, just a few months ago, in the spring, that more than 500,000 people were displaced by this storm. Due to the storm happened in Bangladesh, more than 1 million people have already been driven out of this region. And this is 2020, when people have to be evacuated during the pandemic, of course, that complicates it a great deal as we are seeing right now. Another really important fact that made by Pope Francis and others is that when such kind of events happen, that have the biggest impact on the poor people, community of color, and other minorities. Another important problem that associated with high temperature increase is more fires. No one can forget the horrific fires in Australia just in the end of previous year during their summertime. Wildlife was immensely hurt. What about Amazon? There are man-made fire every day happening here as small spots. And in Southern Europe, the Prime Minister of Greece says that this is a climate having a huge impact on Southern Europe. Increasing temperature also melts the ice. Here is an unnamed huge glacier in Greenland 85 years ago. And here is what it looks right now. And if we look at the statistics, of course, ice melt 4 times faster than experts have ever thought about this glacier in Greenland. And the same thing happens in Antarctic. You can see how the melting of the ice in the Antarctic has accelerated dramatically, especially in the latest half decade. This is surprising a lot of the ice experts there as well. And of course, when the ice melt, you see sea level rise. And the 10 cities measured by population that are most affected by this sea level rise are mostly in Southeast Asia, South Asia, China, which are our neighbors. But when you also look at the cities with which assets at risk, the number one hardest is in Florida, and then Guangzhou, and the list goes on. For example, in New York City, there is almost $130 billion worth of real estate assets that is being at risk. But you may probably not care. But most vulnerable people are the people who live on those low-lying islands, like Kiribati here, because they've already purchased land in another countries, so they can relocate their population when the sea takes over their own land. The list of problems caused by climate change just goes on. It's becoming national security issue, food and water shortages, pandemic disease, refugee flows, and so on and so forth. And now I want to talk about the most relevant one, health emergency, because we are now all aware of it and seeing it having an extremely harsh impact on our life. Not least because the tropical diseases are moving north. Okay, airline travel is probably one of the reason, but the climate conditions are changing, and the changing where these diseases can take root and becoming endemic. And some of these diseases come because we are encroaching on previously wild areas where millions of viruses are still located, and we haven't encountered them before. And according to statistics, there are 5 new infectious diseases emerging every single year. And most of them are diseases that come from animal to humans. Like this COVID-19 pandemic originated in bats, and then it was mishandled and it spread widely. So the answer to my first question, must we change, is clearly yes. What about the second question? Can we change? Well, luckily, the answer to this question is yes, because we have the solutions at hand. Actually, 20 years ago, the best projection for the wind energy was that we might reach 30 gigawatts by 2010 in 10-year period. And we've already beat that goal by 22 times over. And it's even more, the exponential curve here showing the use of green energy is very inspiring. But what's more inspiring is when you look at the best projections for the solar 18 years ago. By 2010, they estimated we may be able to add 1 gigawatt a year as solar energy. Well, when 2010 rolled around, we beat that goal by 17 times over. And last year, we beat that goal by 121 times over. And it's basically because the cost of these technologies are coming down so quickly, just like the computer chips. Now, here's an example of the effects it's having on Chile. These are all the solar panels that they have under construction now and approved for construction to begin. Obviously, this is a breakout. And there are many regions around the world where we are seeing the same pattern, and this is incredibly inspiring and causes a lot of hope. But the very, very good news is that we are never going to run out of solar energy. We get as much in 1 hour as the entire global economy needs for the entire year. We are also seeing the electric vehicles begin to displace the internal combustion vehicles in many parts of the world. And this exponential curve is also very exciting, just like the ones for the wind energy and solar energy. So come back to my second question. Can we change? Yes, we've got all what we need. Then let's move on to the last and the most important question. Will we change? And that's kind of the question and the reason why I'm here speaking today. However, this question really is not easy to answer. I believe to many of you, it's the same. As a citizen of a country whose economy is heavily dependent on fossil fuels, and as a current environmental researcher who cannot find enough information and data about this climate things in the country or even the whole Central Asian region, you may see that I actually didn't have any example about Central Asia or nearby regions. But also as a future environmental engineer who is aspiring, but whose mother is actually very against that because she thinks even if we sign the Paris Agreement as a country, we still saw little support on this matter. It is saddening and disappointing. Yeah. But I believe that later is always better than never. Our world depends on it. And the Central Asia now should think about this and think about this seriously. And we need to answer this question by ourselves that will we change? Thank you.